Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Lasagna, bringing you all the filthy casual takes on the world of sports for you sports fans out there that are, like me, filthy casual. And in this episode, this is episode number 297, by the way, we're here to talk about the red and gold team in the NFL, that is the San Francisco 49ers. And what we do here is a weekly roundup of what has happened this past week for the red and gold team. That is, again, my San Francisco 49ers. But normally, if you're new here, if you're new listening here, we normally do it on the back end of the week. And this time around, for this edition, I decided to bring it up earlier. I decided to bring this weekly roundup, this edition of the weekly roundup, much earlier to the schedule for this week. Maybe other weeks when I'm emotionally charged. My feelings are emotionally charged, like what we saw this week for how things went for the 49ers in this week number 8. And yeah, this game that we saw from San Francisco, it just got me in my feels. It just got me in my feels. And if I didn't address it now, and if I waited till later in the week, I don't know. This one, I feel like I had to get it out there. I feel like I had to get it out there now, then rather wait till later. Otherwise, I don't know. It just felt something. It just felt something in my soul that I have to get it out there now. So we're gonna get into it in this weekly roundup, early edition, here on Very Cold Lasagna, number 8, by the way. So if you're new here, make sure to, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. And if you're not subscribed yet, what the heck are you waiting for? And hit the like button so it can be spread out all over the YouTube algorithm. Is that a word? Algorithm? But anyway, and then go on your keyboards and then let me know your takes. Let me know your thoughts on the topic at hand, which is the San Francisco 49ers and the things that we're going to be talking about, which is how they did in this past week's game. And I'll let you know how what they did, who they faced, and a look ahead towards next week's game down the line in week number 9. And if you're listening to this on the audio side of things, we are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Make sure you rate and review the show and follow me on social media on the X and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna, and slide into the DMs where you can also send me your hot takes over there. So that being said, let's get into this game. Week number 8, the Niners were going to begin a 2-game road stretch, which was going to start in Houston and then end in the big blue side of the Meadowlands in New York. So they first was Houston, the Houston Texans. They were coming off a Monday nighter against Seattle where they came flat. They fell flat on their face, especially offensively. But obviously, when you're looking at from the Niners side of things, you obviously didn't want to overlook that because the Niners were having their own problems, especially when it came to the hospital bill. Yeah, the hospital bill, the injury mania, once again, running wild on their own side of things. And they were going into this game once again shorthanded, as has been the theme all season, this season, for the past how many seasons. They were going into this game severely shorthanded, especially defensively. Well, they didn't have anyone on the defensive line because, well, there's no Nick Bosa. There's no Fred Warner anymore. They're gone for this. They're gone for the season. And we learned on the Monday before this game that Bryce Huff, one of the last remaining edge rushers that is good on this team, he was also going to be gone a few games because he suffered a hamstring injury in last week's game against Atlanta. So you don't have Bryce Huff, your last good remaining edge rusher on this team. And you also didn't have Yuta Gross-Matos due to an injury that I don't remember. So you don't have any good edge rushers. And one of my keys to victory for this game, for this depleted 49ers defensive line, is you just gotta pray. Yeah, Robert Saleh has to get on his knees and just pray that there's something out there that some player is gonna step up and be a god. Ugh. And unfortunately, that didn't happen in Houston, because CJ Stroud and his offensive line, that offensive line that Houston just doesn't want to invest in. Yeah, CJ Stroud's offensive line was made to look like God. Ugh. Because of the lack of a pass rush, the lack of a run defense. Pretty much the 49ers defensive line made CJ Stroud's offensive line look like God. Ugh. So, yeah, CJ Stroud pretty much had all day to throw. He had all day to throw. He had pretty much all day to do anything and everything. So, now it was not just that. This depleted 49ers defensive line. It was also getting hit by the injury bug too. Alfred Collins, he left the game with a shoulder injury. Fortunate that he was able to come back, but then you lose other guys that didn't come back. Sam Okionwonko, sorry for mispronouncing his name, who seemed like the only decent guy left. Jordan Elliott, Robert Beal Jr., all gone in the fourth quarter. And then, yeah, this is just the pass rush, by the way. This is just the front four. And yeah, you get into the secondary. Because you have no pass rush, because there's no one in the front four. Hell, no one in the front seven, because there's no front four. Robert Saleh had to call a bunch of blitzes, and even the blitzes didn't work on CJ Stroud. So it makes you wonder, what was the game plan? What was the game plan? Like, what were the adjustments from Saleh and the coaching staff? I don't know. But anyway, the lack of a pass rush allowed CJ Stroud to play, I don't know, what was like, whether it was Madden or backyard football, mutant football league, on the easiest of difficulties, like as if the defense was non-existent. Every single tackle that the secondary, whether it was Upton Stout, especially Upton Stout, it made me cringe, like seeing Upton Stout like miss every tackle or tackle a defender, but tackle a receiver. Like, these are C-level receivers that CJ Stroud was working with. There's no Nico Collins. There was no Christian Kirk. These were C-level guys like Braxton Berrios or Xavier Hutchinson. And yet, guys like Upton Stout, he couldn't tackle. These were people that they couldn't tackle. It was Charmin ultra soft tackling, Charmin ultra soft coverage. They just were showing too much love, too much care, too much Barney the Dinosaur love to CJ Stroud scrub receivers. Like, it was just so bad. It was just bad, man. It was just bad. So that was happening all game long. But I'll give them this. I'll give the defense this. I'll give them a little bit of very small praise. There was a little bit of a moment where the defense made a stop. They made a few stops to limit the Texans to field goals. Keep the game a little bit manageable. And the Niners kept it a respectable 7-16 game. Even though it was only like 9 points, but yay, hey, it was something. And then, of course, things went right back to where it was before the first half. And before, we'll get into it much later. A touchdown by George Kittle on the offensive side of things, because the defense didn't do its job and allowed CJ Stroud to torch them again for a second touchdown. So they essentially allowed 2 touchdowns the rest of the way. And yeah, had it not been for that George Kittle touchdown, and much more later, I feel like the 49ers would have gotten shut out. They would have gotten shut out in this game, and I feel like they would have gotten blowtorched in this game. So meanwhile, like, let's look on the offensive side of the ball. For most of the first half, they couldn't do jack shit either. So that was mainly because the offensive line couldn't handle the heat of the Texans, which was a top 5 defense, and that was one of the main concerns going into this game. They had a top 5 defensive line, which was led by Will Anderson Jr., Danielle Hunter, but mainly Will Anderson because he is just a very good, if not great, edge rusher. And boy, did he make his presence felt in this game. Colton McKivitz, he's McKiv shits. He couldn't not handle Will Anderson Jr. at all. I'm not sure if they put 2 blockers on him at one point, but even if they did, they could not handle the heat of Will Anderson Jr. alone. So this led to very short drives early on and throughout most of the first half that didn't even cross midfield. So whatever Shanahan had planned, which I imagine was probably more of the Christian McCaffrey and Mac Jones show, it blew up right in his face. It was like, oh shit, I don't know what to do now. It's like when, Triple H's long-term booking. It's like whenever an injury happens, or when the fans don't like it, whatever he has planned out, and it's like, what do I do? What do I do? I don't want to pivot, bro. I don't want to pivot. It's like Kyle Shanahan doesn't want to pivot. He doesn't want to try something else until he's forced to. So at least he tried to pivot, but unlike Triple H, triple fraud. So at least, they gave themselves a chance. They had one of their better drives to end the first half. Mainly thanks to Brian Robinson on the kickoff team, giving themselves a big return and a face mask penalty on Houston. So there was that. And then George Kittle getting that nice touchdown catch from Mac Jones on National Tight Ends Day, mind you. So they cut down the deficit to 16-7, but again, erased by the shitty defensive effort, because as soon as in the second half, after they couldn't get anything on their opening possession of the second half, and they allowed another touchdown, but I'll give the offense this. They responded nicely to CJ Stroud's second touchdown with their best drive all game. The offensive line finally gave Mac Jones time to throw and run. So they gave him a hole where when pressure was incoming. So they got a first down on that. Christian McCaffrey, who was getting bottled up all game, he had a couple opportunities to run through the offensive line. The Texans were doing a pretty good job in bottling up Christian McCaffrey because they knew what to do. They knew what the assignment was. It was bottle up Christian McCaffrey because it was pretty much the offense. That was pretty much the offensive game plan that they were going to blow up in Kyle Shanahan's face. So, during this drive too, I'm going to talk about him a little bit more because, Jawan Jennings remembered that he was Jawan Jennings. He remembered that he was 3rd and 1. He made a big catch in this drive that put the Niners at the 1. And in that situation, in that first down, Mac Jones threw a touchdown to Jake Chungus. Big Chungus. And a 2-point conversion to cut their deficit to 23-15. But that was pretty much it. That was pretty much the end of the Niners comeback because the defense still can hold up their end of the bargain. And any chance of a late comeback ended with Mac Jones throwing a game-losing interception to Kamari Lassiter late in the fourth quarter. So, not great. Not great for the 49ers in this one. I get it. Injuries were getting caught up to them, especially against a team like Houston. Not great offensively, but defensively, they exposed the problems. And I guess this was the bounce back game that CJ Stroud needed. But, these injuries and underperformances by certain players are coming home to roost. Speaking of underperforming players, one of them, I got to mention him again, Jauan Jennings. Jauan Jennings, for all this bitching and moaning, continues to shit the bed. He continues to drop passes, and then especially a bucket pass where Mac Jones had him on a deep pass. That was before the 3rd and 1 big catch at the that put him at the goal line before the Jake Tongas touchdown. He was really pissing me off in this game. Even then, Jauan Jennings was, dropping passes. His route running was a bit questionable. I mean, he kind of tried in this game, but still, it was clear that he just didn't want to be there. I was kind of begging Mac Jones to go to somebody else besides Jauan. Where was Kendrick Bourne? Why was Kendrick Bourne not there? Because he seemed like he was more interested. Why didn't they go direct to Jordan Watkins? What was the point of having Jordan Watkins there? I don't know, but I don't know. Jauan Jennings still proceeded to crap the bed when it mattered. When it mattered. So now looking at the Houston Texans side of things, as I always do in these recaps, with the looking at my team first and then looking at the opposition. For the Houston Texans, I'll give them credit. CJ Stroud and the Texans, they played like their season was on the line, because even with how bad they played, this was their Monday night coming off a bye week was their wake up call that they have to do better. But prior to the bye week, they played like shit. And Monday night they played like shit. So I don't know. I'm not necessarily sure how they're gonna do going forward. But yeah, for now, this kind of saved their season. So CJ Stroud, even without Nico Collins and Christian Kirk, CJ Stroud was still able to get the best out of his C-level receivers. He made his C-level receivers look like B-plus level receivers because, he had pretty much all day to throw. There's no pressure from the 49ers pass rush. I can't even call them pass rush at this point. From the 49ers, I guess you could say ghosts. From the 49ers, I don't know, ghosts, rivals. Let's call it the 49ers defense. I guess you could call it that. Yeah. So yeah, his offensive line, which has been not great, has been not great all season and the season before. They again made it look like God. Ugh. His offensive line was good in pass and run blocking. So CJ Stroud had a lot of time to throw, and he also, when there was a little bit of pressure, he was able to evade that pressure, run out of the pocket. And Woody Marks also had a nice game when his offensive line gave him some running room. And this is all of this good performances by the Texans overall, offensively. This was even with the red zone issues that they were still having. And this could have been a much bigger blowout. The score could have been much worse had the Texans executed in the red zone. Again, that was the key. That was the key to victory on the Texans side of things. When they were in the red zone, when they're in the red area, they had to get in the paint, and they only did that twice. And 12 of their 26 points were field goals, pretty much. So, and that's an area they still have to work on. But I mean, they'll take the W when any day of the week. So that's still an area that they got to work on, though. So going back to the receivers, there wasn't one particular receiver that stood out in this game. But they did their job in stepping up to the plate in the absence of Nico and Christian Kirk. Defensively, it was another very good performance all around, as they again proved why they were a top 5 defense in the NFL. Will Anderson Jr., as I've repeatedly talked about throughout this episode so far, he was having his way with Colton McKivitz. He was making Colton his bitch in this game. And even if they had doubled up on Will Anderson, it didn't work. Daniil Hunter and Dylan Horton in the interior, they had their way with pretty much the rest of the crappy offensive line. So essentially, this Texans defensive line is really good in spite of their 3-4 record now. So yeah, there are some positives with this Texans team. It's just that they hit a rut. There are some flaws offensively with this team, especially with Nico Collins not really getting help, and they don't have Tank Dell for the year. Their offensive line is not up to snuff against the best of teams. So yeah, but defensively though, it is a highlight to look at. In regards to this game, the defense as a whole, it did its job. They did slip up a little when they allowed Mac Jones in the 49er offense to make it a 23-15 game, and they nearly allowed a comeback right before the fourth quarter, and when they were trying to make a late push, but corner Kamari Lassiter made sure that that wouldn't happen. No more damage was done, and he got a game-sealing interception on Mac Jones and beat out Jawan Jennings to pretty much put a cap on the game. So yeah, overall for this Texans team, they made the 49ers their bitches, whether the Niners were depleted or not. Like I said, disappointing performance in Seattle out of their bye week. They essentially had to recollect, and this was their game where their season was on the line. If they wanted to, if I don't know how realistic a playoff spot is for them, let alone the division, they had to play like their butts, their jobs, and pretty much their season was on the line. And this was it. 2 repeats, Stroud spread the ball around to get that offense moving and confuse a depleted and young 49er defense that had no pass rush, that had, I guess you could also say, had no secondary. It had nothing. This defense that the 49ers had nothing. Defensively, again, they mostly shut down Mac Jones and bullied the offensive line. A lot of stuff I already said. So overall, when you look at this Texans team going forward, I wouldn't say they're back on track just yet, because they just simply took advantage of a beaten up team. They exposed what was wrong with the 49ers right now. So next week, they do face a healthier Broncos team that just whooped the Cowboys' ass. In Denver. So it's going to be a much more challenging matchup in a game where it could be a low scoring defensive battle. Meanwhile, for the 49ers, I'll just say this. Look, I get it. This team is beat up. This team is once again getting the case of injury mania running wild on you. But for whatever reason, it's not happening in an odd year. Normally, injury mania happens in an odd year or when the team loses a Super Bowl. But for whatever reason, it is an odd year. Correct me on that. But these injuries are really starting to catch up again defensively. And there were even more coming out of this game with Jordan Elliott, Sam Okuanko, and Robert Beal, all leaving the game at varying points, and they didn't return with their injuries. So, look, I get it. They're injuries. We can't control people getting injured. We can't control like luck and all that. But somebody has to step up. Somebody has to step up in the challenge of other people getting hurt, especially in the place of Nick Bosa, and somebody in the place of Fred Warner. I mean, obviously you can't replace them outright, but with those 2 key pieces gone, you have to replace them. And so far, everyone's failing at that. especially when they're getting hurt. Tatum Bethune, he's healthy, but he's failing so far. And the entire front four has failed since Nick Bosa got hurt, and they're getting hurt, which is unfortunate. And speaking on the topic of getting hurt, why is it that this team is always getting hurt, yet you have shitty teams out there like Carolina, the New York Jets, who are somehow staying healthy. They are somehow staying healthy. And the Giants too. These are shitty teams that are somehow staying healthy. And then you look at what's another team that's shitty? I guess you could say the Raiders. They still manage to stay healthy. So this is a team that's supposed to be like, playoff caliber. Yet they're always finding a way to not stay healthy. Ask me that. So, yeah, I don't know what the game plan is for next week, other than stay healthy. I do know what I can tell you for next week, though. I do think, my opinion, Mac Jones could be starting next week against the Giants. Mac Jones, he does have his flaws. He's been solid to sometimes good in relief of Brock Purdy. And I do think he could start next week against the Giants in New York, because I don't want Brock Purdy anywhere near that Death Life turf. Yeah, that Life Stadium turf that has a high rate of injuries. Did you know that even their own players get injured? They lost Malik Neighbors, their top receiver, to a season-ending injury. Do you want Brock Purdy, Niners fans, to be gone to a season-ending injury? I mean, they lost Nick Bosa 5 years ago to a season-ending injury. So, yes, Jones has played the best football of his career. I mean, and I don't know how low the bar is for that, but I mean, no, seriously, he's played better than he has with New England, better in Jacksonville, and he's had, I say, a little bit of better decision making, quicker releases to the likes of Kendrick Bourne and Christian McCaffrey, but we're starting to see that he's just still a pure pocket quarterback that will only move out of it when there's pressure coming into his face. And his offensive line is doing him no favors either. So when we get out of this game in New York next week, it should be time for Brock Purdy to return. And hopefully by then we get some help in the receiving core. Ricky Pearsall, Jacob Counting, hopefully Brandon Ayuk too. I'm not expecting them all to come back at once. Hopefully week by week. I mean, I'm still trying to be faithfully realistic. It's not being negative, just being faithfully realistic. But yeah. So, and I also don't know what the 49ers are going to do when it comes to the trade deadline. I don't know if they'll start going after big needs like edge rushers or offensive linemen this week to try and save their season. They're 5-3. We're nearing the midway point. So I don't know what they're going to do. The trade deadline is like shortly after the Giants game. And if they do start going after people this week, and if they have already gotten someone after this episode has come out, then great. But it better be someone good. If they don't, and should they lose to the Giants next week, even for as bad as they are, then I feel like they should sell and focus on next season. So speaking of the Giants, that's who the Niners are playing next week. This is the second of the 49ers road trip for this year. They're going to the big blue side of the Meadowlands to take on Jackson Dart and the New York Giants. The Giants, unfortunately, didn't fare well in their rematch against Philadelphia in the second of two meetings in 3 weeks. Why do I say that? Well, the Giants faced Philadelphia in week 6 on Thursday night in the Meadowlands, where they upset Philadelphia. But this time around, it was not exactly how they envisioned. The Eagles exacted revenge, courtesy of a 4-touchdown game from Jalen Hurts and a much cleaner offensive showing from Philadelphia overall. And defensively, Jackson Dart got his butt whooped. Although Jackson Dart did try to keep the team in it for as much as possible, he was still keeping the offense afloat. But whether it be their team's own deficiencies or very questionable officiating, they fell too far behind. It was a practical handicap match in Philadelphia, and they lost 38-20. But the loss to Philadelphia wasn't really the worst part of the day for the Giants in Week 8. It was losing their one of their top few players left on the roster this season. It was rookie running back Cam Scabito, Cam Scadaboo. I don't know why I keep pronouncing it like that. Cam Scadaboo to what may probably be a season-ending dislocated ankle. Like, I don't recommend you looking at how he dislocated that because it looks nasty. So he is getting surgery on that right away. So from what I saw on Twitter and news articles, and that's unfortunate, man. That's he was having such a really good season, and he was really nice. He was really cool to watch, but that's a major loss to the Giants, who was really helping Jackson Dart and himself along in their rookie development. And it's also another key loss to the offense as a whole because they already lost Malik Neighbors to a torn ACL. So you're wondering, like, what does Jackson Dart have left on offense? It's like, damn. So some players to watch in this game for the 49ers. It's, well, whoever starts at quarterback. Like I said, I envision Mac Jones gets one more start because if Kyle Shanahan was smart, you do not put Brock Purdy on that Death Life Stadium turf because, well, do you really want him getting hurt in his first game back from, holding him off for as long as you did, and then you're going to put him on Death Life turf with that turf toe that's supposedly fully healed? Just saying. So imagine, hopefully, Mac Jones gets one more start. Then you transition back to Brock Purdy. Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey had a little bit of a quiet game this past week against Houston. And the Giants apparently don't have a good running defense at all because they got trounced by Saquon. So if the Niners are smart and Kyle Shanahan is smart, you take advantage of that. Take advantage of that run defense, but don't make it too much of a priority. I mean, obviously you want to make it a priority, but don't focus entirely on that because obviously you want to attack more of the Giants' defense. And then for the New York Giants, obviously Jackson Dart is a player to watch because since replacing Russell Wilson as starter in Week 4, he's played mostly smart, mostly efficient, and he's tried his damnedest to keep his talent-deficient team in games. Even with his rookie moments and his mistakes, and as well as being a part of the Giants choking a 19-0 lead in Denver, he's still a quarterback that the Giants might have finally locked in on for the future. And then the Giants front four, that defensive front that has Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, rookie Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau. They're still, like, even if their secondary is questionable, that front four is not to be messed with. So, and that front four gave Jalen Hurts trouble in both of their meetings this year, which is basically 2 of 3 weeks. So, with this offensive line that's really bad for the 49ers, this defensive front for the Giants should give trouble, just like the Texans' defensive front did to the Niners. So, obviously, as we're doing this in the beginning of the week, there isn't much to report on the injury front, and all the injury news is going to be put on the back end. Looking at what we have so far with the injuries, as I talked about with the injuries early on for the 49ers, Jordan Elliott, Sam Okungwu, and Robert Beal Jr. came out of the Texans game with various leg injuries. Jordan Elliott and Sam had ankle injuries. Robert Beal Jr. had knee inflammation. They'll know more about the severity of it. Hopefully not too serious. And then for the New York Giants, they didn't have Paulson Adebo at corner and safety Javon Holland with knee injuries in their Philadelphia game. They're hoping to have them back this week when they take on the Niners. And Brian Burns, who did play though, they're hoping to have him back. Not have him back. They're hoping to have him healthier for this game. So looking at the keys to victory for both of these teams, obviously for the Niners, you want to play much better defense in spite of the injuries. Like I said, Robert Saleh has to throw up a prayer that someone steps up on both the front seven, the front four, and the secondary, that even against a shitty team like the Giants, that someone will do well and pressure up Jackson Dart, force a turnover on Jackson Dart, make a play on Jackson Dart, anything to get this defense going and whatever remnants there are. And then looking at the offense, I know the game plan could probably revolve around Christian McCaffrey and, with this weak Giants run defense, but you got to get the passing game going too. I mean, it did against Houston. It did against Atlanta. I mean, obviously you still want to make the passing game a one of the focal points. And one of the focal points should be Kendrick Bourne. You got to get him re-involved. And I'm just wondering, why hasn't he been a factor in the last couple of games? Mac Jones clearly has a connection with them. You got to start making him a focus again, especially if this is going to be the last game that Mac Jones starts. And then for the Giants, like I said, you got to quickly pressure. If you're the front four, all the people on the front line defensively for the Giants, take advantage of the beaten up and terrible 49ers offensive line and pressure up Mac Jones, force him into mistakes, and get to Mac Jones, sack his ass. Something that the Texans didn't do this week, surprisingly. So you got to get in Mac Jones's face and force him into mistakes for as talent efficient as you are in other areas. And then looking at the offense, you got to find some production in the running game now that Cam Scatteraboo is gone potentially for the year with that dislocated ankle. So you might have to turn back to Tyrone Tracy, who had some a little bit of success last year before they drafted Cam Scatteraboo. So maybe Tyrone Tracy could be your short-term answer for now. And maybe Devin Singletary. You might have to go run back that tandem. So you got to find some answers in the running game again. So yes, both teams need to find some answers. Like in this, what could be a get right game it will be a get right game for either one of these teams. But for the 49ers, they really need to have a get right game, especially as the injuries continue to pile on in Santa Clara. And that's something that, honestly, even with a few reinforcements coming back, the 49ers cannot afford right now. So, drop your thoughts on the 49ers loss to the Houston Texans, whether it's in the comments on YouTube or slide into the DMs at Very Cold Lasagna. Not a great loss, even with how depleted the Niners are right now. And let me know how you're feeling going into the Giants game next week in week number 9 in the big blue side of the Meadowlands. Yeah, that Deaf Life Stadium turf. Let me know about that in the comments below too on YouTube or at Very Cold Lasagna on socials. But anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. I have been your host, Dylan Lasagna, bringing you all the filthy casual takes on the world of sports in this early edition of the Red and Gold Weekly Roundup early in the week. This is number 7, by the way, and in episode number 297 of the podcast. And as always, keep the lasagna very cold in the fridge with your takes on the world of sports. And this is Dylan Lasagna signing out. And I just hope that the 49ers, do better in the big blue side of the Meadowlands and just get a victory next week, I suppose. But anyway, until then, we'll talk about the Niners in whichever next episode is next. But until then, peace out.